Welcome to Coffee and the Bible. Coffee and the Bible is a casual conversation about God where we talk about scripture and put it in a relatable way that we can understand today. Eventually, you'll have every book, chapter, and verse in one spot, rumble.com/fuller, the home of Coffee in the Bible podcast. And if you want something deeper, of course, we're always talking at this at a very understandable way. If you want something deeper, let us know, and we'll create a whole nother video lecture on a very deep study, and we can do those as well. So just let us know. But right now, grab your coffee and your Bible, and we'll see you back in a minute.
Welcome to the Coffee and the Bible podcast, where we brew thoughts and pour over the scriptures. Join us as we explore faith over a cup of coffee, diving deep into discussions that matter. Visit our website for more content at rumble.com/fuller.
Got my cocoa and my...
Get ready for enlightening conversations that inspire and uplift. Let's fill our cups with coffee and our spirits with the Word.
All right, so we are back. We're going to finish up chapter 11. We were in Long's. Dory was helping another Filipino wrap some sticky rice and banana leaves. But so this is homemade cappuccino from a very nice espresso machine. So there you go.
Delicious.
That's what I got today. Let's see. I guess we'll go ahead. How's the weather out in Washington State?
It's just starting to get sunny. It's just a little overcast, a little chilly. It's beautiful, crisp, clean air.
Yeah, it's chilly, a little bit chilly here too. So I'm in shorts, but I had to wear a zip-up sweatshirt this morning. A Black Rifle zip-up light. So it's a Black Rifle one. But
for some reason, I had visions of you wearing thermals with your shorts.
No, why would you think that? No, I had I had a Black Rifle zip-up sweatshirt this morning with my shorts. There you go. Thermal? No. I saw people in Pennsylvania wear shorts and then the old cow pusher boots. How is the weather in Greenville?
Blue sky, sunshine, kind of nice.
All right. Cool, cold, warm, hot.
It's warm and it's on the increase, so it's going to be hot before the day's over.
There you go. All right. So we always try to touch on something in the news. All I found, again, was still talking about why are they releasing about aliens and why did they meet with a special group of pastors out west, the government, because I thought that was a little weird. But all of them agreeing that there's probably no such thing as aliens. They're probably all demons and angels and stuff. But you had something you saw about Walmart. So why don't you share that? We'll talk about that.
Jeremy on the quarter here on Rumble was reporting that there was a lady who was in Walmart. He didn't know what town, and I never went and researched it, but one of the Muslim workers in Walmart got mad because she was filming the jeans and she got filmed, and I guess it's against Muslim religion to be filmed or whatever. So she got all mad, and then another Muslim worker from Walmart came over there and started harassing her, and the lady's like, listen, I'm not filming you. I'm filming this. You got in my shot. It's not my fault, and this is America, because the girl was telling her to erase it. This is America. This is America, and this is a Christian nation. So she was just giving it to her and telling her, hey, this is my freedom. If you don't like it, go back to where you came from. Take that religion with you too. Thank you.
Yeah, so I saw that video, and she was saying, I'm just filming the jeans. I'm trying to film the jeans, and I've done that before. I've gone to the store, and my wife sent me for something, and it's a lot easier for me to show her a video of it, and she can tell me exactly what to get. So we don't know the context of the filming of it, but we do know that she said, I'm just filming the jeans, and they don't have a right to come up and say that. If I was her, I would complain to the store, but what do you think, Brian?
I think you should complain to the store. I think if Muslims think they have the right to get in everybody's business, that they all need to leave the United States and go back to where they came from.
Yeah, if you're not gonna assimilate, then don't be here. That's the problem they're having in England. Glenn Beck was talking about that this morning. He's in London right now, but he's worried a lot of the people that came for this conference by Tony Robbins are being met at the airport and being told they can't even come into England. They have to leave and go back because they're all coming to be more like American constitutionalists, and they're all coming to try to promote the British people to stand up against its own government. And so they're trying to catch people at the airport and tell them they can't come in. And he's there. The problem is with England is they got rid of all their industry a long time ago. And the only industry they have is more financial related, but AI eventually will take all that away. And you won't have anybody being able to make any money in England. And then they brought in all of these people from Muslim countries that don't want to assimilate, don't want to work. They want to live for free and have 1,500 kids that the government takes care of. And the people that are working to fund that, they're becoming fewer and fewer because the jobs aren't there. And so the whole purpose of the Tony Robbins thing with Glenn Beck is to try to promote the people to stand up for themselves. And so a lot of the people were met at the airport and told to go back home. Glenn Beck this morning on the radio talked about the fact that they've already contacted the State Department because they don't even think they're going to last 1 or 2 days before they get kicked out of England too. Weird.
Well, they're probably flying into London, and London's 90% Muslim now.
Very crazy. Okay. I'm going to review a little bit last week. It's funny because we finished the podcast, like we could have talked another hour on that topic. And Chappie and I thought about meeting again to try to finish it, but I figured, I'll give a summary. And if you think the summary is good, we'll continue with this week because we have a limited time. But if you think there's more you want to talk about, we can. But the idea Paul was talking about is when he talks about women covering their heads in the church, a lot of faith traditions have taken that verse in the beginning of chapter 11 to say that all women have to be covered when they go into church, like Eastern Orthodox. Every woman has to cover. But Paul wasn't saying every woman everywhere has to cover. He was saying just the women in Corinth. He didn't say that. He didn't say that in the book of Romans, Galatians, Colossians, Ephesians. He didn't say that to Timothy. He didn't say that to Titus for Crete. So he doesn't say that to women everywhere. He only said it to the women that were in Corinth because the women that had the nice long hair and the jewelry and the makeup were prostitutes. So but Brian, right? Like almost all the churches in North Carolina that I associated when we went to the Bible college were fundamentalist churches. And they had the same problem there. They didn't make people cover their hair, but I heard a pastor one time tell women in the church, he said, you have to be ugly when you come to church. You can't be pretty when you come to church. If you're pretty, you're going to be, that's prideful, and you're going to make all the men lust after you. So you have to come to church in ugly clothes and ugly hair. I heard a pastor say that from the pulpit. You got to come to church ugly to the women. How crazy is that?
I can understand wanting ladies to be modest with how they dress to come to church. You don't want everything hanging out and then every guy drooling over them the whole time they're at church.
Yeah, that's true, but that's not what he was saying. He wasn't talking to people that were dressing sexual. He was saying, "Hey, you look too pretty to come to church. You got to come back ugly." He said that's the words he used. Got to come back ugly.
Can't come back.
And it's just, and that's always based on a misunderstanding of 1 Corinthians 11. Paul wasn't saying to everybody. He never said to the women in Rome, which was also very sinful, or Ephesus or Galatia or anywhere else. He said it here because specifically in Corinth, women that really were adorning were probably prostitutes. And the end result is what he was trying to say is that you should be a different person after you're saved than you were before. The way you acted before and the way you act after should be different. Is that fair?
Should be, yeah.
I think that's really all Paul was saying. Because even Dorie said that in the Middle East, everybody has to wear a burqa, right? You could be a prostitute. You're still wearing a burqa. Wearing a burqa doesn't mean you're more modest. It just means you're following the law. you're still a prostitute. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Extremist part of the law, though. The burqa is part of the extremist part of Muslim.
No, but I'm saying in countries, because she worked in the Middle East, in countries where they have to wear it, everybody has to wear it. And even if it doesn't mean you're modest because you're wearing it, because you could be a prostitute and you're wearing it. So dressing modestly doesn't necessarily mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not saying I'm not on ladies trying to attract guys, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm saying though, right? And the thing is, I'm not talking about dressing provocatively, because we see that happening, especially in Myrtle Beach. Everybody thinks if they're on vacation, they're going to come to church in a swimsuit, and it's just true. So, and that's not correct. But and I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that having somebody dress a certain way doesn't mean that person is that way, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, the way you dress doesn't dictate who you are or how you live.
Exactly. Yeah. And the point Paul was making, and I'm just saying that because some churches, like fundamentalist churches and some extreme, more liturgical churches, will say that it does. So I'm just clarifying that Paul was just saying that you should be a different person after you're saved than you were before. That's really all he was saying. Now, as we get into this part, starting at verse 17, a lot of people, a lot of faith traditions, a lot of denominations, they use 1 Corinthians 11, the last part, when they do the Lord's Supper, whether it's called Lord's Supper, communion, Eucharist, which just means blessing, whether it's Passover, but they call it Pesach, Seder meal. Every church has a different name for this. It's encompassing the Passover meal, and it's been reduced to the bread and the cup, but in reality, originally it was the whole meal. And we talked about that during Easter. We talked about that in our Passion Week. So if you want to learn all the foods that existed in that, we talked about that in a podcast. I don't remember the episode, but it's called Passion Week. So if you look at that, we talk about all of that. We have a video that goes with it. We have a download that you can have and all this stuff. But
maybe that would be a good thing, though, if you did the whole feast like at Easter time. Wouldn't that be nice?
It would be nice. It would be nice. And I was first introduced to it by a Jew from Israel that became a Christian, went to Bible college, and he introduced more of a messianic Passover meal. And every year, especially when I pastored, I always found a church that did it, and I always offered it to the people in the congregation to participate. I've not found one in Myrtle Beach, so the whole time I've been here, I haven't been to one, but I'd like to find one. But everybody should do it at least once, and especially at Easter, you get the full feel of what the Last Supper really was like. Or even here, when we get into this with Paul, you find out that he's actually talking about the full meal. He's not talking about just the wine and the bread. That's what we've reduced it to. He's talking about the full meal. And because remember, 1 Corinthians is a letter about solving problems in this church. And what I was going to get at is every church uses what Paul says here when they do the Lord's Supper. When I was a pastor and I did the Lord's Supper, I read from 1 Corinthians 11. Every church you walk into that does the communion or the Lord's Supper, they're all reading from 1 Corinthians 11. We don't read from the gospel account because Jesus did a whole lot of other things. He washed feet. He called out Judas. He told James and John, don't be in a hurry to be at sitting next to me in heaven and all this stuff. So there's a lot of extra things going on there. So everybody reads from here. But I suggest that this passage is not necessarily here so that we have a service plan for the Lord's Supper. Some denominations, some faith traditions will use this passage because right after he talks about the Lord's Supper, he says, do not do it unworthily. A lot of faith traditions will use that to try to force that the Lord's Supper means more than what it does. You know what I'm saying? All right. Yeah. I suggest that Paul's not even talking about the Lord's Supper to give us a model for the Lord's Supper. Remember, 1 Corinthians is about solving problems. If you start at verse 17, this church has a problem. And it has to do with the Lord's Supper, but he didn't put the Lord's Supper in here because of the Lord's Supper. He put the Lord's Supper in here as part of the problem. Make sense?
Yeah, because anything can be part of a problem if you don't do it right.
And we know for a fact that it's a full Passover meal because of the problem. When we start reading in 17, we understand that if they were just showing up to take the bread in the cup like we do when we go to communion in church, then how, the problem that he talks about in verse 17 doesn't make any sense at all. But if they're doing a full meal with the lamb and the bitter herbs and all that stuff, if they're doing a full meal, then it makes sense what the problem is. Okay. So I'm setting that up. Anything you want to add before I jump into reading the verses?
So you've had lamb before? That's pretty good meat.
Yeah. What's weird about lamb, I've had it a lot. Dory cooks it a lot. It tastes like any other meat to me, but when you eat lamb, it actually makes your blood become hot. And so when you eat it, you start sweating. It's really good, but you start sweating.
The few times I've had lamb, I never really liked it all that much.
Well, and it depends on what seasoning you use. I mean, Dory makes everything taste Filipino, so there you go. It all tastes the same. It's all, got. All right. So, and she's done more of a Middle Eastern way and all. So it's okay. It's okay. I wouldn't choose to eat it, but it does make your blood get hotter and you start sweating and all this stuff. So it is weird. All right, starting in verse 17, we're going to look at what the problem is. It says, but in giving you the instructions, I do not praise you, for when you meet together, it does more harm than good. Well, it does more harm than when they meet together. Why? Verse 18, for first of all, when you come together as Christ's community or Christ's church, I hear that there are divisions among you, and to some extent I believe it, for there must be factions among you, so that those among you who are tried and true may be evident. And he wasn't saying it's a good thing that there's problems, but he's saying because there's problems, we can distinguish who's actually true to God and who's not. Therefore, when you meet together in the same place, it is not to eat the Lord's Supper. For each one takes his own supper beforehand, and one goes hungry while another one gets drunk. What? It is certainly not that you do not have your own house, is it? Don't you have a house to eat and drink in? Or do you despise God's community and try to humiliate those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you? I don't praise you for this. Okay, and then in verse 23, he goes into explaining the Lord's Supper. So there's the problem. From 17 to 22 is the problem. If all they were doing is meeting at church and taking, the cup and the bread, this wouldn't make any sense. He's saying some of you come to church and you know that we're going to participate in this full Passover meal. It's a meal. It's got lamb. It's got herbs. It's got 4 different cups of wine and all. So a lot of stuff, right? He says, but you're coming and some of you have a lot of money and you come and you eat and you eat and you eat and you get drunk and you're drunk. And then Joey over there, man, Joey Bag of Donuts, he's poor. He can't. Dan Bongino. That was from Dan Bongino. And he can't. And Joey Bag of Donuts, he can't afford anything. So he's starving to death while you're a glutton and you're getting drunk. He said, that's a problem here. Now, if it was just an issue where they were coming for church and in the middle of church, they had, they have a sip and they have a little cracker, that wouldn't make any sense. But if they're coming to a full meal and you have this vision of people like, maybe old Hoss comes down first, sits down before anybody else, and he starts gobbling all the food. And then when Joey Bag of Donuts comes over, there's nothing left. Now, I do have to say that when we go to the Filipino once-a-month service, they have food afterwards. And I do have to say that I snake my way to the very front of the line, and I find myself talking a conversation with a person that's number 1 in line, so then they become number 2. So I always get my food first. And there is a running joke with the Philippine community that once Dan heads to the food line, everything's over. Now it's a mad rush. Everybody's running to the food line. So I like to say in the example of Hoss and Joey Bag of Donuts, I guess I'm the Hoss guy. So I apologize. I'm confessing my sin.
Joey Bag of Donuts like Little Joe?
Yeah. So he gets there last and there's nothing left. So if it was just a cracker in a sip of a cup, then it wouldn't make any sense. If there's having a full fellowship meal, a full you know what I'm saying? It only makes sense if there's a big meal there. And in early Christianity, they had the full Passover every time. So they had this big meal, But then Paul goes, okay, the purpose of this isn't to have this big meal, that this meal represents the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So he then gives them instructions later. So we're going to go into this is where he talks about the Lord's Supper. For I received from the Lord what I also passed on to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took the bread, and here what it was matzah, unleavened bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in memory of me." In the same way, he also took the cup after supper, saying, so after supper, again, people miss that. Even when we have communion in church, we'll say after supper. We read this passage, but we sort of gloss over the fact that after supper, because you have 4 different cups. And so you have the first cup, second, third cup is the cup of redemption. That means to originally be redeemed from Egypt. Now it means to be redeemed from sin. So he said, after supper, he says, this cup that is the new covenant in my blood. Well, the new covenant is it's not the actual cup. The new covenant is instituted because Jesus died on the cross. Do this as often as you drink it in memory of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Therefore, verse 27, therefore, whoever eats this bread and drinks this cup in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and the blood of Jesus Christ, right? So and the thing is, a lot of people will read that after he goes through this discourse on how to do the Lord's Supper. And they'll say, look, there's got to be more to the Lord's Supper than just the Lord's Supper, because if you do it in the wrong way, later it says you could be sick or die. As if this whole discourse in chapter 11, 17 to the end is all about just the Lord's Supper, when in fact, the first several verses are about a problem. Everything in 1 Corinthians is Paul solving a problem. And the problem here is some people showed up and they rushed to the table. They ate all the food. They got drunk. Other people weren't able to get there. They didn't get to eat. They didn't get to drink anything. And so the problem is people being selfish with the food, some people being rich, maybe having more food, some people not having anything. And so so this conversation isn't necessarily about how do you do the Lord's Supper. It's really a conversation about what is the problem that this church is having with people showing up and being selfish with the food and getting drunk on the wine and this, that, and the other. What do you think?
Yeah, he's just trying to fix problems. Yeah.
Yeah, it's similar as today, how people are like when that last thing we had with COVID, everybody rushed to the grocery stores and stuff to get all the food, and I don't know if that could.
I think that's a good comparison. Well, even in Myrtle Beach, might have a storm, and the people that have lived here a long time and the people that are new go to Costco and Sam's Club, buy all the water and all the toilet paper. And during COVID, when they're buying all the toilet paper and all the water, the Filipinos were funny about it, because the Filipinos were saying that when they go to the store, they buy all the rice, because you know what? They don't, in Philippines, they use water to wash themselves. They don't use toilet paper, and you can't eat toilet paper. So they were laughing, like, all these people are buying toilet paper and no food. He said, us Filipinos, we're buying all the food.
It's true. I'm not a toilet paper man. I have rid myself of toilet paper for the last 10 years or so. I use wipes, wet wipes. I mean, I had plenty of those during COVID. So like, it doesn't make any sense to me to take a dry thing and yeah.
Well, my son uses the man wipes, and he said, you wash everything else, but the dirtiest thing on your body, you're not going to wash. It's true. It's true.
Well, I mean, you wipe a baby's butt with that. Well, I mean, you don't wipe a baby's butt with toilet paper. So why? I mean, just makes sense.
In the Philippines, they use like a cup of water. They use water. They wash with water.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I forget what they call it, Tobo or something like that. I forget what they call it. But it was funny during COVID because they're like, yeah, all these people are buying toilet paper and we're over here buying all the food. So I'd rather have food, right? You'd rather have food to eat. So
people fight over toilet paper,
but not the food.
You could use leaves. I mean,
you had toilet paper, you had bread, you had meat that all disappeared overnight.
No, that's true. And they were only focused on rice, but that was just funny. But
meat right now, we got squirrels, so we're good.
You're good. You got squirrels. But okay, so that was the problem in this church. So, I try to explain to people, even though every single church, no matter what they are, when they do the Lord's Supper, communion, Eucharist, whatever they want to call it, they read from this passage. And somehow, because it says in verse 27, therefore, whoever eats it unworthily, they try to make the Lord's Supper way more than what it is, because verse 27 doesn't necessarily have to do really with the Lord's Supper as a practice. It has to do with a problem that was listed from verse 17 to 22. And the Lord's Supper is just the example of how that problem was being abused. So you got to remember, everything in 1 Corinthians is about solving a problem. And you're going to see when you get to 2 Corinthians, because in 1 Corinthians, the main problem was the guy sleeping with his stepmom. And then he repents. And in 2 Corinthians, the church won't let him back in. And so now Paul has to condemn the church and say, hey, you know what? He repented. You got to let this guy back into the fellowship. So the first Corinthians, the guy was bad. 2 Corinthians, the church was bad. And guess what? The church you go to, they can go down a path that's not good too. You can take a small church that's filled with God and 100% of the people participate. And as that church gets bigger and has more influence in the area, they could let that get to their head. And all of a sudden, now they're pushing themselves and they stop pushing God. I've seen that before. That can happen.
Yep.
Okay. So we've all seen that. I bet all of us can think of a church.
Sit in the congregation and watch it happen.
Yeah, exactly. You can see it. What coffee you got? I see that. I know.
Oh, Black Rifle Coffee Company here.
Now, if you have that's high caffeine, hyper caffeine.
And Black Rifle Coffee Company fuels coffee in the Bible. That's what.
So, have you had some of that?
I'm on my second cup, and I'm ready to go to the gym as soon as we're done here.
Is it giving you extra energy?
Oh yeah, especially with cacao. Just some cacao. Oh yeah.
There you go. All right.
Cocoa.
Cacao. Okay.
Cocoa.
I don't have that anymore. I think I took that off.
I grew up in New York.
Oh, I got it.
Coffee. Cocoa.
Okay.
Are you playing around with?
Yeah, I stole the video thing from Chappie on TBI. All right. So therefore, whoever eats, verse 27, this bread and drinks the cup in an unworthy manner will be guilty of the body and the blood of the Lord. But a man must examine himself, and then let him eat the bread and drink from the cup. Now, verse 29, for the one who eats and drinks without recognizing the body eats and drinks judgment on himself. So how does he bring judgment on himself if he doesn't recognize the body? I don't think he's talking about recognizing the body, the Lord's Supper as being physically Jesus. I think if you go back to verse 17 through 22, remember the problem was people would get there early. They'd run to the table, eat all the food and drink all the wine. And so some people were drunks and some people didn't have anything. So the problem was that people didn't recognize that there were more people there than themselves. So then when it says in verse 29, for the one who eats and drinks without recognizing the body here again isn't talking about within the Lord's Supper. It's talking about the fact that you have people, verses 17 through 22, that they don't appreciate that there's other people in the church that also want to participate in the Lord's Supper. Does that make sense? Or do you disagree?
I agree.
Right? It makes sense once you start looking at what the problem is. But see, a lot of people only look at the Lord's Supper and then that verse. And then if all you do is look at the Lord's Supper and then that verse, it sort of makes it look like he's talking about the Lord's Supper, when really Paul's going back to verses 17 through 22. All right. They don't recognize the body and eat and drink judgment on himself. And we know this because the next couple verses explains that that's exactly what it means. Verse 30, for this reason, many among you are weak and sick, and quite a few of you have died. For if we were judging ourselves thoroughly, we wouldn't come under judgment. But when we are judged, we are being disciplined by the Lord so that we might not be condemned along with the world. All right. That could go either way in the meaning until you read the next verse. So then, my brothers and sisters, verse 33, when you come together to eat, wait for one another. So he says, you don't recognize the body. And when you do come together to participate in this Passover feast, he says, wait on everybody else. So if the body is referring to just saying, hey, the bread is really Jesus, if that's really what he was saying, then why would he say, when you get to the table, wait for everybody else, right? Because the original problem in 17 through 22 is some people weren't waiting. They were eating all the food and drinking all the wine. So then he says, hey, you need to wait. You don't recognize the body. He says, when you do go to the Passover meal, wait for everybody else. Okay? Wait for everybody else. Verse 34, and if anyone is hungry, let him eat at home, so that when you meet, it doesn't lead to judgment. And then the rest I'll tell you when I get there, basically is what he says. So you have this issue where he says, the problem is you don't recognize anybody else. You don't recognize the body, referring to the body of believers, because 17 through 22, a lot of people were getting drunk, eating all the food, not letting Joey Bag of Donuts get anything. And then, but he says, when you go to the table to eat, wait for everybody else. And if you're hungry, eat at home first. If you've already eaten before you came, you're not going to be in a rush to go to the table. If I'm already full when I show up at church, when we participate in this Passover meal, I'm not going to eat all the food.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense because my father's parents, I didn't ever go to church with them, but they were always telling me to say prayers before I went to bed. But the biggest thing for them is, oh, don't eat yet. We haven't said prayer. We'd always say a prayer before a meal, and we'd always wait for everybody to get there. I think, wait. Even if grandma was up getting other stuff, we're like, no, wait, hold on. We can all pray together. And I think that was important. And it's really hard for me as a grandfather with my granddaughters trying to get that. You got a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and you're trying to tell, wait, let's pray. And they do. They actually wait until we get to break bread to pray and all that. I think that's important.
Yeah. And Dory was saying that too. And we were talking about this on the way back from Long's this morning, and she was saying that it made sense because that's what her dad would do. He would always make everybody wait so everybody'd eat at the same time. And that way, one person doesn't eat half the food. And especially if what you have is limited, it's not fair to everybody else for the last person to get nothing and the first person to get half the food. When all my kids were little, I had to make my son eat last because if he ate first, when he was a teenager, he'd eat everything. There wouldn't be anything left for anybody else. And so I always had to make him eat last, not because of anything other than the fact that make sure everybody got something. And I don't know, he might not remember that now, but it was funny. It's funny now when I think back, but it was true. So, you want to wait for everybody else. And that's basically what Paul's saying. The problem was, it's not that he wrote this about the Lord's Supper to have this institution where, yes, we are to participate in the Lord's Supper. Jesus said, do it as often as you meet until I return. We are supposed to participate in this. But some people take just that passage in the next 2 verses and try to make it say something that it doesn't always necessarily say. And we're not here to argue theology. We're not here to say it doesn't say that, and we're not here to say it does say it, but we're just saying in 1 Corinthians 11, Paul wasn't saying it. What Paul was saying is that the problem was people showed up to try to eat everything and drink everything. And he says the solution is if you're hungry, eat before you come. Because the purpose is to remember Jesus' death and resurrection. And when you get to the table first, wait for everybody else. That's just good manners. Good manners. Yeah.
Talking. I was, how a couple of Coffee and the Bibles ago, this is probably like 2 months ago, we talked about Sunday dinners. I started doing Sunday dinners with my family and that's been a success. So this is like the second month, actually. So we're going to be, I think, Labor Day's at the end of this month. We were going to try to get together for Mother's Day, but we're making it, our family is making it an event for like one Sunday out of the month to get together and eat. And it's, get together, I think we need to get more of that together, America. Let's get together, barbecue, roast, cook, get together and talk, praise.
All right, so I gotta actually jet to take her to work. If you want to keep talking, I'll be back in 20 minutes.
I gotta go to the gym, but
all right, so I will catch everybody. I'm sorry that I'm cutting it short, but I got to get her to work.
TBI Thursday.
Play that song, Short People.
Yeah, Short People got. So remember, TBI Reality Thursday. We'll be looking at the next chapter, chapter 12 next week. So if you have any comments, you want to contribute to this conversation, put them in the comments. If you want something deeper, let us know. We'll create a deeper theological video at a later point. But until then,
let's go Sabres.
Yeah, let's go Sabres. All right, we'll catch everybody later. All right, bye.
Have a great one.
Yep.